All right, here we go. So thank you guys again for joining us for Career Prospects in STEM, the student session. A lot of the parents joined this session a couple of weeks ago. I am really happy to have Carson Billingsley here to join us and present to you today. Carson is the Assistant Director of Employer Relations and Outreach in our Career Development Center. I know many of you have been on other webinars and workshops hosted by the Career Development Center, and they have all been extremely helpful and informative, and I have no doubt that this one will serve you well too. So I am going to give it over to Carson, and again, if you have questions, stick them in the chat and we will take care of those at the end. Thanks.
Thanks, Nicole. Hello, everyone. Hope your summer is going well, that you're anticipating the August being the last month of summer, and then hopefully the fall coming up soon is an exciting time to get back to some schoolwork and next steps. Thanks for joining the session. A lot of you might have seen some of this information previous, but I thought it's still good to include a majority of it. It still is pertinent to not only your exploration for careers, but also some of what the recruiters that typically are coming to WPI are also looking for that information as well. Just a quick little background about myself. I'm joined WPI in January of 2020, previously working in employee relations at both JHU, Johns Hopkins University, and University of Maryland. Prior to that, I worked in publishing in operations and recruiting role. So I know from both sides of the coin, is both the higher ed career development side and then also corporate recruiting. In my spare time, I love to enjoy hiking, gardening, and playing with my 3 dogs. And so my role at WPI in the Career Development Center is really to conduct businesses and connect students with businesses and faculty for recruiting purposes, development for internships, co-ops, full-time opportunities. So just a little overview. I'll kind of go through some of this information. You can review it on your own in the recording as this has previously been offered, but it's still good, as I said, background to kind of have that conversation that we'll have later on some of the ending slides. This is our first destination snapshot of the last class of 2019 that just graduated last year. Every year we conduct a survey of graduating seniors to see, get that pulse up on how many students are getting jobs going on to other opportunities. As you can see, 72% of our undergraduate students graduating are employed, and about 20% going on to grad school. So that's pretty high, especially compared to some of the other institutions. How that breaks down, this is something that employers are also looking at as well, are how many students are seeking employment or have, specifically the salary as well. Some of our sample employers, these employers that are consistently asking to engage with students, but also want to know, some of those numbers that I just mentioned. Here's a quick little trend of our first destination survey over the years. As you can see, the employment rate is typically and graduate school rate is does not change overall too much. One thing to note though is the average salary has been increasing for students going back even before the 2016. Where does this information kind of come from? A lot of it comes from our first destination survey, but also from the NACE salary survey, which is given out to 2020 new college graduates. And it's also data reported by the actual employers that are coming to recruit on campus. And for those who are not sure what NACE stands for, it's the National Association of College Employers. So what does that look like as far on the career WPI Career Outlook? We have many career outlook pages on our website. Please feel free to peruse them, especially as you're trying to think about, what do those careers look like? If you are interested, here's an example of maybe you want to learn more about biomedical engineering, especially at WPI. On our career outlook page, we're going to have information about some sample job titles, some of those major qualifying projects our seniors participate in that are in the biomedical engineering degree. Who are the companies that are hiring those students, and what graduate schools are those students going on to as well? Gives a great overview of if there's a certain major that you're unsure of. So we're going to talk about some jobs and opportunities as well. This is basically what careers that degrees in or STEM careers can offer students, especially at WPI. Life sciences and bioengineering is a quickly developing industry. Particularly, you might be thinking about some of the news you've heard about the COVID-19 pandemic and how there's a race to develop a vaccine as well. So we have employers such as Moderna, who's a great employer partner at WPI, actively recruits our students, and is really on the forefront and cutting edge technology for hopefully developing a vaccine. Some of the things that are also trending are the robotics or the Internet of Things, and how devices can be connected and talk through and communicate together. That ties into advanced materials and manufacturing. Of course, cyber, data, and security and computer science are always heavily in demand and kind of cutting edge as well. And then as well, those traditional majors of aerospace and aeronautics, construction, sustainability, and then even user experience in gaming, all provide robust employers that interact with WPI. So what are employers asking students or skills that they're looking or interested to see in students? Might be, yes, of course, major might be important, but there's also a lot of reporting from employers seeking, those, soft skills that our students learn through hard work, collaboration, teamwork, and really just experiencing, their high school education and then hopefully their college education as well. So what is that? Top one, of course, is problem-solving skills, but also right up next under it is ability to work and collaborate on a team, strong work ethic, communication skills. What's really interesting as well is those technical skills are almost down at the bottom of this report. Those skills that you do learn in the undergraduate program and your major are important, but employers really want to make sure that you have that well-roundedness, that you are able to take direction and work independently, but also as a team. Here's a quick little heat map of the jobs that are posted in WPI's Handshake. That's our online job portal that WPI, as well as many schools throughout the United States, use. As you can see, the big majority concentration is in that Massachusetts, Boston area, than the Mid-Atlantic. But there are jobs and opportunities not only throughout the United States, but the world as well for WPI students. As you can see, here's a little breakdown for the class of 2018 on some of the states in the New England area, but then also nationwide and worldwide where students went to. And a quick little sample of employers that do recruit at WPI. They range from large companies, Amazon, robotics, Salesforce, PepsiCo, to some of those cutting edge employers such as SpaceX or Blue Origin. So now I want to talk a little bit about and hopefully generate some questions from you about what does it look like as far as the recruiter or the employer side when they come to an institution such as WPI to interact with students. Many of them are looking to connect with students and build that pipeline and brand for their employer at the institution to ensure that they're filling their needs for full-time hiring, internships, and co-ops. So both on the employer side and then also on the student side, that kind of overlaps through the sourcing of candidates. I'll talk first on the student side, but this is also a lot of it's true for the employer as well. First and foremost, the job postings. As I mentioned, the WPI Handshake is paramount on getting that information in front of students, but there are other job platforms that employers are posting on. We would definitely encourage our students to use Handshake, as that is, definitely the employers that have a great relationship with the Career Development Center. But don't limit yourself to that, as well, as employers aren't limiting to only posting at various schools' job platforms. On campus and virtual career fairs are still very relevant. This year, of course, WPI, along with many other institutions, will be doing all of our virtual career fairs virtually, but still a great opportunity for both students and employers to interact, have that 10-minute conversation, get to know each other, exchange contact information. Info sessions and networking nights are ways for students to go and actually learn about the company, and more importantly, maybe network with some of those recruiters and alumni. Most of them will be done virtually, but this is still an opportunity, regardless of how they're delivered, is still a great and beneficial way to interact. Alumni and recruiter panel discussions sometimes tie into info sessions, But as I said, they're usually a time to learn more about the employer, the job opportunities, but then also most importantly, ask the questions that you want to hear so that you can identify yourself to the employer, kind of stand out, but also learn more about the job opportunity or the organization itself. It's a two-way conversation. That is something that you want to make sure that it's a right fit for you, for your future, for your career interests, for your personal interests. And that's usually how a good candidate can stand out with an employer, is by having those good questions prepared and to ask them. Finally, another great way of sourcing opportunities, industry days and corporate super days. Sometimes employers come to campus and put on, through various departments, large industry days where there might be several represented companies that specifically are from, say, a mechanical engineering or aerospace industry. They, for lack of a better word, they are mini career fairs, but that's a great way to kind of go and engage. So what's the next step after, kind of sourcing, interacting with, an employer, finding that opportunity that you really want to go for? The elevator pitch and networking, that is the first part of, like, as I mentioned, the on-campus or virtual career fairs. It's super important. Knowing your skill set, you're usually going to have them, submit your resume or hand a resume to a person, but being able to succinctly and quickly deliver a 90-second, minute and a half paragraph on your interest in the company, possibly, with the jobs that you're seeking, and kind of what your background is as well. That definitely helps to sell your candidacy to the employer. Typically after that, there is a phone screen for the candidate. Maybe it's with the hiring manager or an HR individual, with someone who will kind of talk through your resume, maybe ask some questions to first screen you. That's not always the case. Sometimes after, especially at a career fair, you might just immediately get scheduled for a on-campus or virtual interview, but there is that sometimes option to have a phone screen before them. Next comes a first round interview that can be hopefully on campus. That's a great opportunity for employers to directly meet with their potential candidates. This is one thing that we always tell employers as well when engaging with WPI's Career Development Center, is that employers that do on-campus interviews at this institution and other institutions as well typically see a higher yield of candidates and a better applicant pool. So definitely look for those employers that are interested in coming directly to campus to engage with you. That can also be virtual, or even an employer's corporate office as well. Sometimes you may have to travel, especially if they're like a local, say, a Worcester employer. There's an occasional second round interview as well. That can be after the first round interview. Maybe it's a little more in depth. Maybe it's across team functionalities within the employer. It can be on campus virtually, or at the employer's corporate office. This is sometimes a super day. A lot of industries will use a super day, or employers will have a super day where they invite all of their candidates to engage at the corporate office and go through a full day of networking and interviewing. While that might sound intimidating, usually when if the process is that involved, you will have, usually maybe even an alumni from that institution that will kind of be your coach and guide or mentor during that process. So that's kind of how, a student should approach, thinking about recruiting or their career, that it is, it's a wide variety of opportunities at WPI, at an institution, but it is not a pigeonhole per se. It is, just because you're majoring in something doesn't mean that you can only go into one career. Before we open up for questions, I'd like to finish with that, is that, one thing that I've always looked for in candidates, or we hear this from all of our employers, is that they're more looking for the right fit of soft skills, transferable skills, the ability to be coached and learn. Employers are really looking for candidates who are inquisitive and looking to challenge themselves, because they will all ultimately guide and teach some of those hard skills they're looking for as well. So if there's any questions, please let us know. I'd be happy to answer them, talk more, kind of expand upon some of the things I've touched on. I know it was kind of quick and a lot, but still it's good, relevant information, and hopefully it's something to begin to think about as you begin to contemplate, what should I major in college? What kind of careers or opportunities would that lead me to? What would be the process during that time? So happy to answer your questions.
So I'm, Carson, a couple of questions came through and they came through as you were speaking. So you may have answered them, but I want to ask them anyway, just so I'm doing diligence. One is, I have heard of people who have to take group interviews. How would I make myself stand out among others?
Yeah, great question. That is something that I didn't include in there because that is something, is atypical. It still does happen. Usually that is part of like a first round or even an initial screen interview. Definitely recommend, really honing your elevator pitch and being ready to deliver it, as I said, in a really succinct, clear message that makes you, memorable. They will have your resume. They'll have that information in front of them. It's not so much an elevator pitch. It's not so much regurgitating, what you're majoring in and your previous experiences, but really what is your interest in the company, your previous, transferable skills, and what would make you a really good fit for their not only the role, but then the culture of the company as well. Would definitely recommend there's, at WPI and every school will have, Career Development Center will have this, is a lot of times abilities and workshops to work on your elevator pitch, work on group interviews and attend those to kind of make sure and practice as well during those workshops, practice, with your roommate, practice with your parents, practice with strangers. It's really, it's a skill that, and a muscle that you can learn and grow and develop.
Yeah, that's really good advice, Carson. I think the more you say something out loud, the more you get comfortable saying it out loud, right? And you did speak a little bit about elevator pitch, but just could you kind of go over a little bit about what is an elevator pitch and some important things that should be included in there and how they might go about thinking?
Great question. Yeah, and happy to expand on that to kind of give a broad overview of that. So an elevator pitch is really typically is delivered when, at a career fair or a networking event. An employer might say, after introductions, the typical first question, tell me about yourself. They're looking for you to come up with, that really 90-second kind of pitch on your interests. So that typically will maybe run the lines of, restating your name, maybe your major, how you heard about the company or the opportunity, your interest in that opportunity, and maybe something that you are currently studying that would be a good fit, or you've heard about in your classroom or your own individual reading that has made you interested in to learn more about that. And then usually follow that up with even a question about, how that role, that research, that company is dealing with the area that you're interested in.
Great. Do you see one major that is more successful getting a job out of college than others?
Good question. That is, something that there's not one right answer. There's not a major that you're going to get a job out of college with, guaranteed. There are majors that, of course, are more in demand, but also have some more competition amongst them. Really, when you're researching some majors, definitely go with what you're interested in, what you're passionate about, because that's going to set you apart from and really drive your interest in learning the career and the major that will set you apart as a candidate. It's really important to do your research on the company even before you interact with them at an info session or networking event or career fair, because companies really want to make sure that they're hiring and interacting with passionate candidates that know their stuff. That if the one question that a recruiter, an employer, does not want to hear when you first interact with them is, what does X company do? You should already know that when you're first interacting with them.
That's a great answer. And I feel like a lot of these things you are talking about can also be applied to the college admissions process, right? Like as they're looking into colleges, and going on interviews, know what that college is known for and have pertinent questions to ask about that particular school. Do companies host info sessions and network events, and how would I learn about those?
Yeah, it's a great question. That companies are always looking to host those, depending on their bandwidth and availability to deliver those programs. It's a great way to kind of begin to get to know candidates, to build brands at various institutions. And most of those will be listed, if not all of them, listed in the institution's career development platform. So at WPI, that would be Handshake. Our employers would list and request all of their info sessions on there. It's typically then advertised out to students either through email marketing, um, usually also on, at least WPI, through social media channels as well. And then also employers also do their own outreach to various student clubs. So regardless of what institution you were to go to, I would definitely recommend getting involved in the student organizations and clubs that are of interest to you, or that are in the industry or career that you are focused in on. They usually receive a lot of outreach from employers, as I said, and it's a great way to start learning and getting to know, who's coming to campus and for what and when.
That's a great tip. Would I include high school jobs on an application?
Great question. It's always important to include the most relevant information on your resume or job application. So, when typically doing resume reviews for incoming first-year students or even second-year students, I do recommend having, some of those high school summer jobs or, jobs that were had during the actual school semester. Why is that? One, it helps to fill out the application. Secondly, it also kind of helps to demonstrate, or can be used to demonstrate, some of those transferable skills that I spoke about employers looking to have. What are those transferable skills? They are looking for, evidence of self-direction, the ability to take charge, the ability to have critical thinking skills. So one example that I've always used that was given to me by an alumni who works in financial services was usually getting a question of, well, I only ever worked in my father's hardware store. I was only ever able to do landscaping during the summer. Should I put that on my resume? If you can apply it to the job they're looking for, so if they're looking for critical thinking skills and, teamwork and self-direction, and you're able to demonstrate that through putting that on your resume or the job application, absolutely put that on, because it's going to show that you, regardless of situation or job that you're doing, that you're able to kind of learn from it, develop from it, and then also be able to communicate that.
Great. And how important is community service?
Community service is always, it can be always great and highly important to not only the company, but to the individual doing it, if you have the time and the bandwidth too, of course. I would recommend, definitely employers are looking for that a lot, especially if it's an employer that you're looking that has a record or a history of being very involved in the local community. So, for example, if you were targeting, say, Unilever, many of you may have heard of that employer or at least used its products. Unilever is very heavily involved in the community, actively encourages its members, its employees to do community service, and really sets aside time and funds in order to enable that. So for a company like Unilever, of course, community service is going to be paramount to some of the candidates that they're looking into. Always good to have that knowledge or experience as well.
Great. And I think I have one more question. And there's two more questions. First, does WPI support students in securing internships, and how often do those lead to full-time employment?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the Career Development Center at WPI, and at pretty much all other institutions, will help, and provide the tools and knowledge and skills for students looking for internships. That being said, the onus or the first step in it is really on the student to come and take advantage of those offerings. Their internships at WPI or any other institution is not just available for anyone who is interested or to come and just first come, first serve. It really does take some effort to source them, prepare for them, interview for them, and secure them. So as I recommended, coming to any career development center, career center in general, and really get to know their resources and utilize them, because it's going to prepare you to be successful candidate. Nicole mentioned, that the more you practice something, after the more you practice something, the better you at it that you're gonna be. So just, you know, continue to do that, and then, you know, you'll be able to secure that internship on your own. A lot of employers do use internships to convert to full-time hires. And so that's going to be a great, you know, source of getting that actual full-time offer post, you know, graduation. That's not always the case. And also remember, you know, an internship is, you know, also an interview for you, for the employer and the company. Is it a good fit for you? Are you challenged? Do you like working in that industry, employer, or a role that you're doing an internship for?
Great. Will employers look at your high school transcript? Typically.
Yeah, very rarely, but every once in a while it can happen, especially for, say, an internship. The only time I've really ever seen that be really asked for is, say, for in the financial services, for like especially like a freshman year internship, which is very rare, even for that field. It's mostly just focusing on your academics for the college, your college experience. That's what they're looking for. If at all.
Thanks, Carson. I'm just going to give it one more minute. I don't think I missed anything, but if I have not asked your question out loud yet, please type it in one more time and we will get to it, but I'm pretty sure I got them all. Great questions, by the way. Okay, I think we are good. If anything pops up, I think you all have our POP email address, which is pop@wpi.edu. You can always shoot us an email, and if we can't answer, we're going to forward it right along to Carson so you can get his input. pop@wpi.edu, and I am putting that in the chat box right now so that you have it, but I'm sure you've all had that a million times already in the past few weeks. I want to thank Carson for taking the time and being here and sharing all this great information with us, and thank you all for joining us. I will be turning off the recording, so if anyone wants to